Advanced Psychoproctology for Beginners. Aholes Diagnosis, Treatment, and Prevention with Dr. Jeremy Sherman. Welcome to Class 13. In the last class, we explored one of two fundamental strategies for hassling Trump bots, obverse psychology, and a few variations on it. Today, I'll introduce the second core strategy and its variations. I call it gumbabying. African-American slaves were prisoners of a Trumbotic, racist, beige supremacist cult. The slaves told stories that offered subtle instructions for messing with their masters, passive aggressiveness, which again is not the sin that it's made out to be. You can't fault the truly oppressed for getting passive-aggressive when being actively aggressive is futile and worse, will get you and your loved ones whipped and killed. The most familiar and popular slave stories are about Brer Rabbit, a stand-in for a clever slave. His nemesis is Brer Fox, a stand-in for a slave master. In the most popular Brer Rabbit story, Brer Fox makes a tar baby, a doll made out of sticky tar, that Brer Fox uses to trap Brer Rabbit. Brer Rabbit encounters the tar baby sitting on a log. He mistakes it for a person and tries to strike up a friendly conversation. The tar baby is unresponsive. Frustrated, the rabbit hits the tar baby, and his fist gets stuck. He hits with his other hand, and it gets stuck too. He kicks it, and his feet get stuck. He headbutts, and his head gets stuck. That's how Brer Fox captures Brer Rabbit. A few classes back, I suggested that Trump bots are like exhibitionists. The tar baby is like that too. An exhibitionist shows up as if they're a normal human receptive to conversation. Once they have your attention, they open their trench coat and show off their sticky taunts. No matter how you respond, the Trump bot plays a wild card trump card to stick it to you. We call them trolls, but exhibitionist is more accurate. They're titillated not just by shocking, but by having discovered that if they drop all conscience and rely on the wild card trump card formula, they can checkmate any predictable response to their sticky tricks. Being a Trump bot is like discovering a magic remote control that controls anyone you encounter. You can give yourself endless entertainment by making people trip, fall, stumble, and walk into walls. There's a perverse thrill in having that kind of power. A tar baby is an excellent metaphor for the sticky entanglement we struggle with when mistaking Trump bots for normal, decent human beings. Slaves must have dealt with a lot of that stickiness. Sadomasochistic Trump bot slave masters would have been great at that kind of exhibitionism, provoking slaves into can't-win corners. The tar baby story can be read as a cautionary tale. Don't fight using predictable strategies. You'll only get stuck. Brer Fox catches Brer Rabbit and plans to punish him. To save himself, Brer Rabbit uses reverse psychology on the fox, begging not to be thrown into the thorny briar patch, as though it would be the worst torture. The rabbit loves the briar patch. It's his home. Thorny questions are a fallibilist lifestyle. Our home. Brer Fox's lifestyle is different. I'm reading a lot into the folktale, but maybe Brer Fox, a Trump bot, can't imagine anyone making their home in among the thorny dilemmas of life. The term tar baby came to mean a problem that gets worse the more you try to fight it. You're just being defensive is a classic tar baby. If you try to refute it, you'll sound defensive. If you ignore it, the accusation hangs in the air. It's not all about you is another tar baby. Whatever you say in response will be about you, thereby affirming the accusation, making it stick. You're not funny also tends to be a tar baby. If you try to make light of it, you might get a soul-curdling fake laugh in response. Sticky. A tar baby is a dirty trick, and by now the term itself is considered dirty. Some people have used tar baby as a racial slur, even though it originated as an ingenious slave culture contribution to psychoproctology. But okay, we can't talk about tar babies anymore. Dig back into African folklore, and tar babies were called gum babies, dolls made of wood and covered with gum from gum trees. Same implication without the skin overtones. The more you interact with a gum baby, the more it sticks. So instead of calling them tar babies, I'll call them gum babies. With non-Trump bots, I try not to use gum babies. One way to avoid them is to make sure to add subjective caveats to any potentially controversial assertion. For example, if I think someone is being defensive, I won't say, "You're being defensive," as though I'm some unbiased authority. I might say, "I think you're being defensive." That's fair. Other people probably know it's just my subjective interpretation. Still, I need to signal that I recognize the ambiguity about whether someone is defending themselves or being defensive. I'm not the authority on anyone's nature and motivations, nor do I consider anyone authorities on what motivates anyone, including themselves. If someone responds with, "Don't tell me how I feel," as though they're the authority, I wouldn't assume they are. Obviously, we know people are perfectly capable of having feelings and motivations they can't or won't identify or declare. Sure, I have the most intimate experience of what I feel, but that cuts both ways on my authority. My feelings bias my interpretation of my feelings. I'm not the authority on what I feel. The same goes for everyone. Now, there are obverse psychology ways to restore your self-respect when someone gum babies you, but only if you can access multiple modes of being, as fallibilists do. For example, if someone says you're not funny, you can say, "Maybe you're right. It's hit and miss with my attempts at humor," and maybe mostly misses. Trump bots, however, do not have multiple modes of being. Sure, they shapeshift, talk out both sides of their mouth, toggling fluidly between prig and punk, but overall, no, it's one simple robotic strategy. They're one-trick phonies. Trump botting is the last refuge of a Trump bot, or at least they hope it will be, having discovered the wild card trump card formula whereby they remain perfectly free and perfectly safe in their triumphant self-regard. They have no use for alternative modes of being, so they atrophy. They've burnt all bridges to them. A Trump bot has nothing beyond Trump botting. It's all they do anymore, at least until it stops working. So gum baby them about their Trump botics. Out them as Trump bots. Attack them at the level at which they operate. Not facts or beliefs, but their mindless robotic trumping of everything that challenges them. Do not try to persuade them that they're Trump bots. Just get them stuck in a loop of their own making. Expose their Trump botting, and they'll Trump bot you for it, which proves your point. The more they fight your accusation, the more it sticks to them. Gum babying works best with an audience, onlookers, online or otherwise. Talk to the audience, not the Trump bot. Some of the most memorable political putdowns have played to the audience. For example, Ronald Reagan's line, "There he goes again." Here's an illustration of gum babying a Trump bot. It's generic, but it shows how relentless and tenacious one has to be. "You're wrong. I'm right." There he goes again, pretending to be the supreme judge presiding over his own case. "I don't do that. You're just a wimp who can't take criticism." He pretends he's God, the objective authority on everything. It's so easy. He'll just insist on whatever keeps him feeling like he never makes any mistakes. He thinks he can overrule reality with his passionate self-affirmation. "Don't psychologize me. I see what you're doing. You just don't like criticism." Sigmund Freud has spoken. "The trouble with me is I think he's afraid to admit he's human. He'd rather play God. He sees other people's motives, but he doesn't have any motives. He's pure, unbiased, the sneering seer of all that is true." It is true. You're just a snowflake. You melt when you're criticized. How heroic. He claims victory by bravado, deciding the case all by himself and assuming everyone who disagrees with him is a wimp who can't handle the truth. You're insulting. You should be more respectful. So anti-PC about other people's sensitivities, but never his own. One minute he's crowing, the next he's whining about being attacked. Poor thing. And yet he's as consistent as clockwork. Prude or punk, anti-PC hero or butthurt martyr, he's always heroic, always the umpire, and always deciding in his favor. No, that's what you do. Like clockwork, this guy. Proves my point. He'll say anything to pretend he's the authority on everything. I am right about this, and I never said I was perfect. Wow, the perfect response again. I don't think I've ever met an infallible genius like this before. This guy is right about everything. Now you're just being mean. Right, I'm bad, which just goes to prove once again that he's the paragon of virtue, the gold standard, the ideal human, superhuman. You shouldn't be sarcastic. The infallible Pope has spoken. Again, he'll decide what's admissible in his godly court. I don't have to listen to you. You're a fool. Of course, he'll find some fake papal excuse why he need not ever listen to such impertinence from his inferiors. He plays God nonstop. You're arrogant. The Pope has spoken. He decides who's arrogant, and it's always anyone who challenges his arrogance. You don't face facts. God is here to deliver the facts. I'm a critical thinker. A pope and a genius too. Is there no virtue this God doesn't claim to have? He can't tolerate dissent. He's afraid to let anything but his own self-certainty pass his ears. We should feel blessed to gain an audience with someone like this, who knows it all. You're just rude. The snowflake umpire of the universe has spoken. Let it be known by his degree there's no place for anyone who disagrees with him. You're an idiot. Playing God is all he's got. He's masturbating in public. He believes his masturbatory fantasies are real. So real, he's proud to be jerking off where all can see. A lot of people agree with me. Delightful, a circle jerk in public. He and only he has company in his beliefs. This proves he's God. I'm not listening to you anymore. There he goes, off to rub his wounds and restore his boundless pride. Out of pity, I'll let him get the last word if he wants it, and I predict that it will be yet another high horse condemnation of me for challenging his authority. You're a terrible person. Gumbabying is why we spend so long trying to understand what makes a Trump bot a Trump bot. It's so you know what you're dealing with and can remain grounded in your fallibilist alternative while grabbing and holding fast to the hilt of their reckless sword, their Trump botting lifestyle. In this case, to name them is to tame them. To know them is to be able to focus on what really matters to them, their endless self-righteous and self-righting posturing at heroism. Now, if for you that example was too much detail to risk, you can gumbaby simply, too. Just expose again and again, this person is playing God, claiming the last word on who gets the last word. And it's always their last word, a last word that makes them feel heroic no matter what. You can counter their formula as formulaically as that because, given their formula, everything they do in response will confirm your accusation, at least until they stop Trump-botting, signaled by them getting curious about anything, as though they don't have it all down pat. At that point, turn on a dime and be human to human with them, even thanking them for getting off their high horse throne. Gumbabying a Trump bot is straightforward in principle, though challenging to execute. A Trump bot will try to spin and frame dominate again and again. They'll trumpire, attacking you to throw you off the scent of their one trick, the wild card trump card formula we spend so many sessions detailing. We also spent the last session on how to stay grounded in your fierce, tenacious, flexible fallibilism. You've pre-grieved the possibility that you're mean, snarky, or arrogant. It doesn't shock or distract you to be accused because you've made a solid, educated bet that you're dealing with a Trump bot who only moralizes with no interest in morality. It's not that you've grieved the possibility that you're immoral and concluded that you aren't. Instead, you've got a fallibilist's attitude about excesses. For example, one can be too assertive or not assertive enough. When a Trump bot calls you arrogant, they want you to feel shame for having violated the eternal cardinal moral rule that they pulled out of their butt to save them in the moment. They want you to believe that under no circumstances should anyone ever be assertive. They spout as if being too assertive by their momentary hypocritical standards is immediate grounds for excommunication. That's not how fallibilists think about arrogance or assertiveness or any supposedly absolute moral no-no. It's a no yes. There are times when being assertive is just the right response, even if those you're asserting against call it arrogant to shut you up. As a fallibilist, you watch out for too much and too little of any trait, moment to moment as circumstances change. You don't hold out for Goldilocks perfection or some nonsense like receptivity to everything. It's all give and take. A fallibilist confidence comes instead from maintaining a little background self-doubt about whether they're being too much or too little of any trait, since any trait can help or hinder. If you worry you're giving in too much and that you're not giving in enough, that's just about where you want to be. Fallibilists mind both sides of the winding roads of life. If you veer too far one way or the other, too assertive or not assertive enough, you learn and adjust. You're not going to let some Trump bot backseat driver distract you into driving off the road with their mindless moralizing. Your grounding in fallibilism is how you keep your eyes on the road, focused on your destination, in this case, humbly humbling someone who will do or say anything to keep from being humbled. Their God-playing is the crux of the problem with Trump bots, the hilt of their sword, their absolutely incorrigible, reality-defying Trump botting. Your grounding in fallibilism keeps you from being led by the nose into some opposite extreme. For example, mealy-mouthed self-doubt, shamed into accommodation. You know your civic duty, making room for others without letting them run you or anyone off the road. By the time you gumbaby, you've already done your homework and concluded that you're dealing with a Trump bot who doesn't listen or care but just preens and sneers. That's where you focus your dogged attention. They're not attending to the meaning of the words they say, so you won't either. With gum babying, you're trumping a trump bot without becoming one. You're frame dominating a frame dominator, which they hate. It's like an exhibitionist being bested at their only sport. There is something to the notion that you should blame the sin and not the sinner. In this case, blaming the trump-botting habit and not the person hiding within it. It makes sense to be nice to the person hiding and disappearing within the trump bot shell. It also makes sense to ignore their ideas. They don't mean them. It's evident from how quickly they shift from one moralizing priority to another to maintain their habit or lifestyle of sadonarcissistic bullshit dosing. Again, think of the trump bot as a sword-wielding soul, a fellow human who grabs the sword by the trump-botting hilt, the sword's handle, to slice at you with ideas they don't care about. Do not try to stop a trump bot by grabbing their ideas. You'll only get cut as they slice recklessly. And do not grab the person. Instead, grab that hilt and don't let go. That's what gum babying is all about. It focuses on the problem at its root. You want to grab and hold onto that hilt, keeping the focus on it so that they're jerked around every time they flail off in some new direction. Make it fail every time they flail. Make them pay for clinging to it. They'll only cling harder, proving your point, until they give up or let go. Just stick to your simple gum babying message, variations on this person is playing God, and everything they say in response will prove your point. Keep your messages short and relentless. Their fake infallibility is all they've got. Expose it, and when they flaunt it again, expose it again. From class 7, you'll remember that with language, we can argue about arguing, going meta level after meta level, as in the family exchange that started with the children fighting. How can you ever hope to stay above the fray with someone who, by frame dominance, keeps countering your argument with an argument against your argument, a higher last word that trumps your every word? After all, anything you can do, they can do meta. They'll try to turn any interaction into a game of cat and mouse. Sometimes they'll go high, sometimes low. They'll zoom out to a loftier last word or zoom in to some detail anywhere but where you would frame it. If you go to generalizations, they'll microscope to some last word detail and scold you for generalizing. If you go to some detail, they'll telescope to some abstraction and scold you for microanalyzing. They don't care where they focus so long as they escape your scrutiny. With gum babying, you stay focused on exposing that very robotic shiftiness. High or low, lofty or lowly, macro or micro, flexible or insistent, cynical or absolutist. The only way to pin them down is by exposing their trump botting in all of those manifestations. Whether they go low or high, you stay meta above it, focused on them going low or high. They'll just keep adding last words. With gum babying, no matter what last word they claim, it proves your point that they always claim the last word. Plant yourself firmly in gum babying and stay there. This person will say or do anything to pretend they're heroic. It's basically he's being defensive and it's all about him. Watch them try to squirm out of it. The more they wriggle, the more it sticks. They'll prove your point every time they try to deny it. They'll likely turn it on you with some variation on I know what you are, but what am I? They'll say something like, no, you're the one who thinks you're right about everything. You can respond with more of the same gum babying. Wow, again the master has spoken. The saint genius has pronounced me wrong for thinking I'm always right, a trait he abhors in others and therefore assumes he would never exhibit himself. As we've seen, he is a paragon of inquiry, curiosity, and humility, because if there's one thing he hates, it's people who try to get the last word. Of course, they might toggle from prudish pope to cynical brack with some variation on, so what, you do it too. Gum baby that too. Now he's taken off his priestly collar and pulled out his slingshot. Now he's posturing as a cynical, slippery brat who knows that morality is a joke. One minute he's scolding you for your immorality, and the next he's laughing at you for caring about morality. What a joke. Suddenly reality is just a jerk-off contest to see who can jerk off best in public. Let the best public masturbator win. He's got that one, hands down. Masturbating in public is an accurate description of trump bots. They close their ears and eyes and self-pleasure in public. Saul Alinsky was a fallibilist leftist community organizer who wrote a book called Rules for Radicals. Its rules have since been adopted by right-wing organizers too. One of his rules was to embarrass your opposition with actions that they find embarrassing but you don't. For example, Alinsky once held a shit-in at the Rochester airport to protest racial discrimination. The protesters simultaneously locked themselves in every bathroom stall at the airport and wouldn't leave until the city made concessions. It was something within the realm of experience of the protesters and out of the realm of experience of the powers that be. It worked. That's the spirit here. It's fair game to shame Trumpbots for behavior that you don't find shameful. It's a little like please don't throw me in the briar patch. It's a double frame dominance. First, because your framing can embarrass them into defensiveness. And second, because though you've tricked them into thinking that you're embarrassed to be accused of masturbating, you're not. Masturbating in public is, of course, different from masturbating in private. I'll have more to say about that in the next and final class. I don't think masturbating in public is always a problem. I'll argue that a rock concert or even a church service can be a perfectly harmless and honorable form of self-pleasuring in public, a large and respectable public circle jerk. A cult rally would be too, but for one big difference that I aim to identify in the next class. Perhaps accusing people of masturbating in public is outside your realm of experience, and it would be a wrong verbal warfare gambit in many circles. Still, I mention it to demonstrate the range you have, fierce and feisty without becoming a Trumpbot. If you keep your eyes on the prize, not attacking their ideas, not their person, but their Trumpbot lifestyle, you can savage the lifestyle without crossing the line into being a Trumpbot yourself. Again, and more generally, conning, lying, stringing people on, misdirecting them, convincing them of something untrue. Is it ever okay to do any of that? I think most people are on the fence. They half believe it's never acceptable. You can hear it in the way people say you lied, as if one lie is conclusive evidence of total immorality. And yet we half believe that of course it's okay to manipulate, even lie. Any world in which there was never a call to manipulate or lie would be too idealistic to be credible. The question, therefore, isn't whether to lie or manipulate people, but when. We all do sometimes, just not all the time like Trumpbots. The question for fallibilists is under what conditions do you manipulate and lie? Always be honest is dishonest. Always be straightforward is not straightforward. Selfless, neutral, factual accuracy is something to strive for, but not by pretending that you've already achieved it. You can't stop yourself from faking it by faking that you've already stopped yourself from faking it. And if there's anyone to manipulate, it's the people who pose as though they would never manipulate while manipulating you freely. In harassing Trumpbots, you're interacting with someone who can't stop talking, yet can't hear themselves. As long as they get away with their bullshit dozing, they'll doze. You're not going to wake them up short of tricking them or getting people to laugh at them. You're sure not going to get them to hear themselves thinking by responding to them as though they are thinking. They want you to believe they're thinking. So long as you do, they don't have to think. Whether they go Pope, accusing you of being a shameful know-it-all, or toggle to cynicism, arguing that you are a know-it-all too, you can gumbaby them about their lack of curiosity. This master of the universe is so sure he's got it all figured out, I bet he couldn't name one open question he has about reality. His only remaining question is how to get more people to see the light as he has. If they trump out that too, saying, you don't know that, challenge them to name something that still has them wondering. That question flatters the Trumpbot with attention, but it reverses the Trumpbot's false sense of heroism. To answer it and therefore get some attention, the Trumpbot has to express a real doubt. Know-it-alls hate to come up empty-handed, but a real Trumpbot will on this question. They're so high on knowing it all that they can't name a live question that still has them wondering and doubting. They'll tend to leap to the question of how to get more people to see it their know-it-all way, but that doesn't count. You're asking them to name a curiosity about the world, something the know-it-all doesn't yet know. Generalizing from this example, it can be useful to dare them to demonstrate that they have any quality that's a badge of honor for fallibilists and a mark of shame for a Trumpbot. Since they're committed to proving that they're the best at everything, they'll want to flash any badge of honor, but in the process, they'll end up demonstrating that they're not the best at everything. This is another application of Alinsky's approach. Ask questions you're comfortable answering, but the Trumpbot isn't. For example, if they deny being a know-it-all, congratulate them and ask them to identify the last big mistake they made. If they act like they were victims of circumstances, congratulate them on being human and highlight that they admitted reality is more powerful than they are. When they scold you for being offensive, congratulate them on their human sensitivity and mark their PC response. When they preen like they're anti-PC, congratulate them on their tolerance and applaud their tolerance of those who would be offensive to them. If they pose as anarchist libertarians, ask them why, if they believe in free markets, they aren't already rich. Every virtue they proclaim is a vice by another standard they proclaim. By congratulating them, you're cornering them with their inconsistencies. Trump bots only live for immediate victory. They act like gladiators in a death match, as though nothing matters but the moment. But whenever we debate, we're dealing directly and indirectly with predictions. Even when we're discussing what happened in the past, it's about how we should remember it and learn from it going forward. Trump bots are know-it-alreadies. They talk like their bullshit dozing about tomorrow is just precisely how tomorrow will go. They strut their prognostications as prophecies of the inevitable. You can gum-baby them about that too, or you can simply assume that the future will decide your debate. To ground debate in future reality, I have sometimes proposed concrete, detailed money wagers to Trump bots. If things go the way they know they will, I'll pay. If things go some other way, they'll pay. Trump bots have never taken me up on the bet, but even proposing the wager calls attention back to future reality in ways that seem to sober them up a little. Here's a gum-babying gambit I've found extremely effective with Trump bots. Sacha Baron Cohen is a master of it. Call it clone to own, imitating them with deadpan mockery. Gum-baby them, but with straight-faced sarcasm, unlike the examples above. While complimenting them, run their arguments to their absurd conclusions. Stroke them with just the kind of flattery they unconsciously crave, and without the least hint of irony, parody, or mockery, even though you're serving them heaping helpings of it. Pose as their most enthusiastic supporter, their dream fan come true, pleasuring them for their bravery, wisdom, benevolence, and genius. The temptation will be strong to signal that you're mocking them. Resist it. Onlookers will get what you're doing, but if you do it right, the Trump bot won't. They'll sleep on, lulled by your mockabye baby lullaby. It disorients them. That's you frame dominating a frame dominator. If they do suspect the mockery, how will they respond? There's a bind, perhaps familiar to you. For example, in trying to decide whether to apologize to someone for a slight they may not have noticed. If they notice the slight and hold it against you, you want to apologize, but you don't want to call attention to the slight if they hadn't noticed. When you clone to own, you put a Trump bot in a related bind. If you're mocking them, they'll want to attack you. But if you're not mocking them, attacking you would be to snatch defeat from the hands of victory. They could ask you what you mean, but that would signal weakness. They don't want to be treating you like an authority on anything, including what you mean. If they do attack you for mocking them, you can play innocent. What? I complimented you. Don't be so insecure. You can then double down on the mock flattery, still planting it right on the edge, making their arguments sound absurd without letting on that you think they're ridiculous. Master manipulators deserve a taste of their own medicine, and clone to own often proves a fruitful counter-manipulation, as Sacha Baron Cohen has proven again and again. Clone to own is like feigning excitement when an exhibitionist uncloaks, or like soul-curdling fake laughter. It's disorienting. It's like granting someone something they're striving for unconsciously, exposing their embarrassing ulterior motives. Clone to own also demonstrates a fallibilist's agility. I once asked a retired CIA spy what was his biggest takeaway from his training. Go Gumby, he said, which he explained meant being flexible, adaptable, bendable, like the popular 1960s toys Gumby and his horse Pokey, rubber dolls with coat hanger wire skeletons. You could bend Gumby any which way. Of course, a spy has to keep track of which way they're bending, keeping up different appearances with different audiences. A Trump bot doesn't keep track of which way they're bending. Having opted for proud hypocrisy, Trump bots have freed themselves from keeping track of the moves they make. If they're caught in an inconsistency, they just have to deny it, make up some proud excuse, and change the subject. Trump bots neither have to nor want to keep track of their motives. It would hamstring their be here now, free here now hypocrisy. In contrast, a fallibilist is good at going Gumby, a more skillful shapeshifter, because they're watching the winding road, keeping track of theirs and other people's moves. When you clone to own, you're using that fallibilist advantage to your advantage. Asking leading questions is a variation on clone to own, also employed exquisitely by Sacha Baron Cohen. The classic leading question is asking a lifelong bachelor when did he stop beating his wife. Notice the pile-on of assumptions, that he has a wife, that he beat her, and that he stopped. Notice, too, that none of those assumptions are asserted. You don't accuse, you assume. Again, don't tell, show. Leading questions are generally unfair with non-Trump bots. Don't let yourself get entangled in them when they're delivered by someone you've guessed is a Trump bot. Notice the leading questions even when you get them from family and friends. A leading question can be as simple as, does this dress make me look fat, or are you falling out of love with me? The person asking may be genuinely interested. And they'll tell you that they're just curious, but they're not just curious. These are high-stakes questions. They want you to be honest, but they also want the answer to be what they hope to hear. They want the truth, but it damn well better be flattering, which puts you in a bind. They're not owning their ambivalence about honesty and diplomacy and will make you pay if you give a disappointing answer, whether it's blunt honesty or tactful humoring. Still, with Trump bots, ask leading questions. Counter-manipulate the absolute manipulators. For example, ask, when did you first discover the tricks that enable you to escape any challenge to your authority? Have you been getting away with it since you were a little kid, or did you fall back into it later? How long does the thrill of trolling last? Do you feel better about yourself for a few minutes, an hour, or does it last all day? In general, with gumbabying in front of others, they may be shocked by your disrespect and may try to intervene to get you to tone it down. The many objections to psychoproctology voiced in Class 2 pervade our culture. Most people are hypocritical verbal pacifists, though they don't know it. They'll shame you for shaming as though there's never a place for disrespect, not because they've thought it through, but because shaming is a popular noping strategy to ease social tensions. You hear it in the popular but absurd judgment that no one should be judgmental, or the prevalent negativity about negativity. Most people haven't confronted psychoproctology's challenging questions. If your audience is prone to silence anything that sounds like a confrontation, it could undermine your attempts to gumbaby. I've had many exchanges with trolls in which someone intervenes to tell us both to be nice. The trolls love that. They put on their papal crowns and side with their unwitting accomplice to scold me for being impolite. You have to watch out for that, and to the extent possible, keep your interactions with the troll one-on-one in front of your audience. It's hard to frame dominate a frame dominator with others intervening naively to play umpire. Once he became president, Trump no longer granted audience to dissenters. Occasionally, though, he would end up in a Twitter exchange with a celebrity, none of whom ever tried the gumbabying approach. There were a lot of missed opportunities. Instead, the celebrities took the bait, responding to Trump's ideas and values as if they mattered to him as anything more than weapons. The celebrities responded as if entering a debate about morality with someone who cared about it, like debating the moral philosophy of dominance with some alpha male ape. Perhaps one of the reasons the celebrities failed to gumbaby, and this applies to news anchors and interviewers as well, is that they had status to maintain. They wouldn't risk their careers by trying anything too confrontational. Their safest bet was to treat Trump bots, especially the president and his enablers, with respect as though they were normal people. That made them accomplices. It has been a travesty for this country to indulge a Trump bot cult with that much enabling attention. Psychiatrists know never to ask psychopaths about their intentions. To do so gives them credibility that they haven't earned. But that's just what we were stuck doing under the Trump cult, supplicating journalists, asking Trump and his enablers whether they meant what they say. It's enabling, boring, futile, toxic, and doomed to failure, but that's what you're stuck doing when you can't afford to consider grabbing a Trump bot's hilt. Never ask, do you mean that, to a Trump bot? They'll insist they do when really they don't. Do I mean it? Sure, whatever, if it scores me points. That's a big challenge with Trump bots. They'll insist that they care about whatever so passionately that it overrides all other considerations when really, judging by their actions, they don't care about it at all. Do not let yourself be persuaded. Once you place a bet that you're dealing with someone lost in the Trump bot lifestyle, ignore their impassioned pleas. It's just for show. They hope you'll take them seriously. When gumbabying or in any verbal combat with a Trump bot, your power depends on you not caring what they think, having the ability to walk away. If you care about their opinion of you or of what you say, you're vulnerable. And again, you never want to appear to be trying to convince a Trump bot. It sends a terribly mixed message. Don't even make the case to them that they're Trump bots. If you do that, you're inviting them to correct your misreading of them. You're a Trump bot for this and that reason sends a mixed message like saying, here are the reasons I conclude that you're not listening to me, to someone who's not listening to you. A parent of a manipulative child eventually learns to stop offering reasons for their decisions. To offer reasons is to invite debate over them. Gumbabying violates a social norm. We often revel in talking about the cluelessness of others. Gossip like that is exempt by contempt bonding. I call it we glee, the glee of being we, the wise, not those others. If we and friends can laugh together at the cluelessness of someone absent, it proves we must not be clueless. Trump rallies were we glee orgies, sneering at the evil fools who didn't support Trump, made everyone in attendance feel like genius saints. With we glee, it's always present company accepted. We can laugh at people who are absent, But laughing at the cluelessness of someone you're talking to, well, them's fighting words. It's a violation of an intense social norm, a taboo against ever accusing someone to their face of being another human with an ego. You're welcome to laugh at others, just never directly at them. Fallibilist friendships relax those social norms. Fallibilists are generally better at laughing at themselves with others. In contrast, cults are notoriously bad at self-effacing humor. Religions, too. For example, most religious texts are humorless and utterly devoid of self-effacing humor. The heart of fallibilism is self-effacing irony, a capacity to laugh at ourselves with others. Like playing to an audience, there's also talking about a Trump bot behind their back. In a word, gossiping. You may need a fallibilist update to your approach to gossiping, too. People give lip service to the half-witted principle that you should never gossip, never cast aspersions, never be a tattletale, never be disloyal. Those are fake principles people preach without practicing them. The fallibilist question isn't whether to gossip, but in what circumstances. Warning others is a kindness and more a civic duty. Obviously, there are times to character assassinate behind someone's back. Don't be fooled by that misinterpretation of the ad hominem fallacy as saying you should never attack character. Again, when someone makes you wrong for saying what you think, they're inviting you to keep them in the dark and talk behind their back. If you've tried and failed to establish some give and take with a Trump bot, there is nothing immoral about telling other people what you think of them. A Trump bot would love to shame you for shaming them to others. They would like complete control over you and everyone. When you gossip about Trump bots, though, be strategic. Your credibility is on the line, too. You probably know what it's like to be corralled into someone's defensive pity party. For example, a person complaining about their ex as a total narcissist or some such. You probably experience some ambivalence about whether it's honest reporting or vindictive. Right or wrong, our credibility goes down whenever we engage in self-defense. Defending others is one thing. Defending ourselves will tend to sound defensive. We either gain credibility or lose it when we slag off others. Sometimes we lose credibility unfairly to someone who pretends to live by fake principles, like you shouldn't gossip, you shouldn't be judgmental, and negativity is a no-no. We can also lose credibility because we bring too big a head of steam to our gossiping. Again, fallibilism helps. When gossiping about Trump bots, don't act like you're the authority. It's arrogant to claim to be the umpire deciding who's arrogant. You're not the umpire. You've merely placed a careful bet. You're not trying to coerce the person you're gossiping with to side with you. You're providing evidence of red flags. You're not infallible, nor trying to win some infallibility death match. You can talk about the mistakes you made in your interactions and about what you admire about the person you've decided is a Trump bot. And you can talk without urgency if it's not an urgent situation. Insistence will make your gossip sound more like a vendetta than a word to the wise. You may find yourself disappointed that I don't give you a massive list of alternative techniques beyond obverse psychology, gum babying, and their variations. There's a reason I don't. The hardest part of fighting Trump bots is keeping it simple, which is the only way to harass them. There's a lot of fancy footwork involved in applying these two techniques. Still, my sense is that the fancy footwork is only productive when you confine yourself to these two basics, obverse psychology mostly for defense and gum babying for offense. To convey these tricks efficiently, I've indulged in a self-help shorthand that I don't find credible. A lot of self-help reads like, just do it. Just decide to stop acting, thinking, or feeling this way, start acting, thinking, or feeling some other way. Like it's as easy as flipping a switch. Again, I call that robo-envy, wishing we were robots who could simply reprogram ourselves to be different from now on. So I'll end here by correcting that shorthand by saying something about the slow and messy process of getting good at disgracing Trump bots. And by the way, you're not disgracing them. They've already disgraced themselves by pretending they can ignore reality. You're exposing that disgrace. Even if you've got some experience with it, you're likely to feel tawdry for using these tricks. For one thing, success with them doesn't reward you with a clean resolution. You can't expect that with a Trump bot. Any encounter is likely to end ugly. About the best you can hope for from it is them cursing you as they disappear and you laughing at their retreat. And that too is unlikely. More likely, they'll be cursing and laughing at you feeling ambivalent about how it went. Take it in stride. Again, if you don't want to be a Trump bot, expect some anxiety. You have to keep your heart and mind slightly ajar, even with a Trump bot. You have to be a little open to unpleasant feedback. That's your overall fallibilist lifestyle. So, of course, in competition with someone shamelessly committed to remaining shameless, you'll come away feeling more self-doubt than they will. That's okay. Take a shower. Do something distracting. The unsettling, achy biochemistry splashing around your heart will flush eventually. You may even learn something from the interaction, and not just about the Trump bot, but about yourself and the dilemmas we're all dealing with. Applying the tricks I proposed is difficult for people with a gentle temperament, or people long steeped in a culture that traffics in those moralizing half-truths, like love is the answer, always be nice, and when they go low, you go high. It takes time and practice for most of us to settle comfortably into a fallibilist stance, and a Trump bot doesn't want you settling there. They want you wishy-washy or brittle like them. If you're wishy-washy, they can knock you off your game for being a spineless wimp. If you're brittle like them, they can accuse you of being an a-hole, thereby neutralizing anything you say because you're just as pig-headed as they are. You are pig-headed in this respect. You are not going to tolerate Trump botting, not from yourself, not from others, not for your sake, not for society's sake. You're going to give a ration of hassle to anyone who plays God as though they rule reality. You're going to splash cold water in any assaholic's face, anyone drunk on their own superiority to reality, and not because you represent reality. You don't, none of us do, but because reality won't cut any of us slack for ignoring it. And as a fallibilist, you're going to stop being pig-headed about their Trump botting the second they stop doing it. The way to show a Trump bot that it's not about them but their lifestyle is by turning on a dime, treating them with respect and receptivity the second they begin to reciprocate. You bet they're a Trump bot, and when they stop acting like one, you change your bet. The techniques suggested here are challenging to apply when you're already deep in habitual ruts with a Trump bot. For example, a spouse, when your habits of moralizing at each other are deeply entrenched. I'm tempted to say, warning, don't try this at home, but you may have to try it there. Just don't expect it to work right away. You need practice. We all need practice fighting fake infallibility with fallibilism. Again, study the masters. Above all, keep this course's two big questions alive. Learn new techniques for distinguishing and fighting Trump bots. Assume you'll make errors in this trial and error, iffy effort. Remember that there have been Trump bots in history who couldn't be stopped no matter what was tried. They had to run their course until reality caught up with them. Live with the tension between there must be a better way to deal with this person, and maybe there isn't. Some people are incorrigible and indomitable till death. Keep reading and studying how to deal with difficult people and meet all advice with skepticism, including mine here. And remember that my purpose here is not to suggest how you should always respond to Trump bots, but how to expand your repertoire. It turns out there are a lot of techniques that society has sworn off because they sound like Trump botting when really they aren't. For example, manipulation. Remember, manipulation only tends to corrupt. Absolute Trump-botic manipulation corrupts absolutely. Okay, one more session to go. It will be on Trump bot prevention with an emphasis on how to enjoy Trump botting safely, what I call optimal illusion or safe escapism, kidding ourselves about our authority in ways that help more than they harm. Escapism is inescapable. Reality is too intense for humans. We need to be able to get on our high horses and strut about our superhuman authority, and society has cultivated some delightfully benign ways to do it that we'll be exploring in the next session. Wondering together where to draw the line between safe and unsafe escapism. See you then.